So Sonic Frontiers The Final Horizon Update 3, it's great, I love it, but even I can admit that there are a lot of flaws in it that really shouldn't exist considering how minor they are, but they all stack up to make a pretty unenjoyable experience for a lot of people. Which is why I came up with this list of things I'd love to see changed, ideally through an official patch or update from Sonic Team, but could also be implemented by modders, so also consider this a bit of a wish list for mods I'd like to see added to the game. And the most important one by far is being able to swap between the new characters Amy, Knuckles, and Tails along with Sonic after completing the first trial. I do like that the game gives you some time to play as each of the characters without being able to swap between them and learning their moveset through their gameplay, but once you've played all the characters once, I think it was a pretty bad decision to have them only swappable right before the final boss, because the reason Sonic Frontiers is my favorite Sonic game is because you can do anything at any time and it always counts towards progression and filling out the map and just collecting things. I love doing it, but in this update you're restricted to the things you can collect because some things can only be collected with Amy or Tails or Knuckles or really done efficiently with Sonic, like the mini bosses and cyberspace levels. But you were unable to swap freely between these characters until right before the final boss, which is about 3 to 5 hours of gameplay, with most of that gameplay being these really difficult tower platforming segments, which are fun to do if you were in the mood for them, but if you were just playing through the game to get to the point where you can swap characters like I was, not knowing how far it was into the update that I would get that ability, it made the towers more frustrating than anything because I didn't really want to play them at that moment. I was just doing it so I would have the ability to play the parts of the game I wanted to at that time. Being able to do whatever, wherever, whenever is one of the best aspects of Sonic Frontiers, and the fact that they lock away your ability to do that for majority of the update's playtime makes the first playthrough not as fun as it could be. So I'd love to see the characters be able to be swapped by talking to the Coco pilots at the top of the trial towers, with an activatable pulley at the top of every tower so we can swap characters and retry that particular trial without having to reclimb the tower. Speaking of pulley checkpoints, they should be on the trial towers in general, at least on normal mode. I do know that on easy mode, they add a bunch of springs and balloons to skip all of the platforming segments of the tower, but I think there should be a middle ground between finishing the tower by just pressing the X button a bunch of times, or taking on these hard platforming challenges with no checkpoints. Some people want to experience the game's challenge but not have a bunch of time wasted if they end up making a mistake. So I think adding checkpoints to normal mode specifically would help a lot with this, while retaining the challenge for people who want it on hard mode. Speaking of checkpoints, I also think there should be some checkpoints in the cyberspace levels. They are so expansive, so many multiple pathways, so many ways to traverse the level via the ramps, and scouring the level to find the little animals, to do mini platforming challenges with them, experiencing a Sonic level as if you were like Mario or something because you're slowed down by carrying the animal, was just a lot of fun to do. But they are very experimental. With how much you're flying all over the place in these levels and how open they are, the pop-in really hurts with readability in these levels, and for some reason in the level 4B, there's these platforms that fall when you step on them, except some of them just fall automatically and you just phase through them, but they look the exact same as the ones you need to step on. The ones that don't fall are colored green, but the red ones that you can step on versus the red ones that can't have no visual indication between the two. So I suggest changing the ones that you can step on temporarily to yellow. That, along with adding a couple checkpoints to every cyberspace level, will actually give people a chance to beat it on their first playthrough, which will actually incentivize people to play more cyberspace levels and get the Lookout Coco required to unlock the trial towers that way. There were so many Sonic Frontiers Update 3 reviews I watched online that skipped over cyberspace completely because people couldn't be bothered to complete the levels, which I think is a huge shame because again, these levels are the best part of the update in my opinion. So I think adding checkpoints would help with that a lot. But the most important change in difficulty adjustment for this update definitely has to be the trials you take on at the top of each tower. The first trial is fine, I wouldn't really change anything about it. The second trial should give you a tip at the beginning telling you the intended method to beat this trial. Honestly, I don't even know what the intended method is. I've seen people parry the saw blade back and forth as they attack the enemy, which looks like the intended method, but they also remove all of your abilities except for the psi loop, and that method doesn't use the psi loop. The way I did it was just circling the enemy and punching 3 times times to not get knocked back, and I only beat the trial with less than a second left, so I don't know if that's the intended way, but regardless, they should give you a tip telling you how to do it, or add a minute to the timer so that people can consistently beat it the way that I did. The fourth and third challenges should definitely be harder. I don't really know how they could increase the difficulty of the tiger trial, considering that you can just constantly infinite parry, so maybe don't change that one. But for the fourth trial, either buff the health of Ninja by a lot, or change the time limit from 10 minutes to 30 seconds, because I can literally beat that boss in less than 30 seconds every time, so having a 30-second limit could be a good challenge, or maybe even just a minute, or have the times adjust depending on what mode you're playing, easy, normal, or hard. But regardless, 10 minutes is enough time to beat the boss like 20 times. That thing needs to be harder. What doesn't need to be harder is the final trial. I like the challenge and the concept behind it, but two big changes need to be made. Number one, the lead-up segments to the Titans should be removed. It's just a time waster. It's not a challenge. I don't know if they included it because there's no way to program the boss fight to start at the supersonic phase, but they really should just have you go from supersonic to supersonic to supersonic for all three of the Titan bosses you do, and they should give you a higher ring limit. What really would have been cool if Sonic Team had the time to do it is to have you retain all your stats for the trial, but buff up the Titan health and add an extra surprise brand new third phase to each fight. It would have taken way too much development time, but ideally that's what I would have loved to see. And speaking of these Titan boss fights, I would have loved to play them as Knuckles, Tails, and Amy. Ideally through the ability to unlock them as playable characters for the entire story of Sonic Frontiers. Probably as a 100% reward for getting everything in the Final Horizon update. I know that they would be broken in Cyberspace, as well as the open zone worlds, but this would be a post-game reward, New Game Plus type stuff. I don't really see that as an issue. My guess as to why they didn't do it is because they didn't have enough time to play test these characters in Cyberspace levels and create new cutscenes and supersonic fights for them. But you could just remove the cutscenes from the game, make it more of a non-canon alternative thing. I don't know, it could have been done. But the biggest missed potential of not being able to play as the new characters on previous islands is not being able to experience their combat at all. In the new Uranos, the only enemies are souped up super guardian bosses that are meant to be taken on with a fully leveled up Sonic with all of his combat abilities. Meaning that taking on these foes as the new characters is borderline impossible and wasn't really the way that the bosses were designed to be fought. Because there's nothing in the combat of the new characters that really combos well together. It's just a bunch of standard attacks, which is fine, but when you can't really use those standard attacks on standard enemies, what's the point of even having them besides enabling Knuckles to do the infinite fly glitch again? Just seems like a huge missed opportunity, and I would love to see their combat actually get utilized by having them be playable in the previous islands, or they could update the game to add small enemies to the new Uranos. Then you can just fight enemies as Knuckles and Tails and Amy in that part of the game. As for changes to the characters themselves, I really like their movesets, but obviously there are some really weird, baffling decisions made with them that makes them feel a lot more clunky. Knuckles gliding, prime example. They should just remove the wind-up animation for gliding, make the turning as sharp as it was in SA2, instead of having it feel like you're controlling a rocket. And most importantly, and I never hear anyone mention this really, is having Knuckles actually stay clinged on to his red climbing wall when climbing up to the edge of it. I was so excited when I found out that Knuckles could boost while climbing. I'm like, oh my god, I can be a hyperactive Echidna and climb everywhere at the speed of sound. But then I found out that if you touch the edge of the wall, you just fall off, meaning that you have to slowly and methodically climb around everything in order to not touch the walls. I thought this was a Sonic game, not F-Zero, but because Knuckles' climbing is pretty much the exact same system as Sonic's, he does slip off of walls when he touches a non-climbable surface. So I would like that to be changed to Knuckles only detaching from a wall when you jump off of it or get hit by a laser or a bullet or something. Another change to Knuckles I'd like to see is to his drill boost. This is a skill that you can get as him to turn your boost into a drill when you have full ring things. It kind of just acts like the spin dash, which he already has. It's just a boost that does damage when you ram into people. I think it would have been really cool to have this ability be able to make Knuckles be able to scale any wall. We already have Tails, who is able to fly everywhere with his power boost, so I don't know why we can't give the same mobility to Knuckles. Speaking of Tails' power boost, this is less of a tweak and more of just a feature I would love to see, probably in a mod, but I would love to have it revamped to where you can actually toggle between being in the mech and out of the mech as Tails, and actually be able to use the guns on the Cyclone to kill stuff. We do have the laser blast ability, but it doesn't really do that much damage to enemies and is only really used for some puzzles, which are really fun puzzles, but having the Cyclone be back with its two big guns, but not being able to use them like in SA2 just seems wrong, especially considering Tails already lacks some combat abilities by not having the homing attack. So my idea for how this would work is that when you're on the ground and press the B button, you can swap to the mech. In this mode, you can use X to shoot things just like in SA2, hold down the button to target, let go to shoot. The big laser would be remapped to the Y button, and then when you boost in the mech, you fly just like you currently do in the update. And you can press B in the air to do a stomp attack. It will basically be the same as a stomp attack without the Cyclone, but obviously with a different animation. And then when you're on the ground, you can press B again to go back into Tails mode. I think this would be a really cool way to seamlessly blend the gameplay of Tails from SA2 and SA1 into one character while having it make sense in this game, as there is combat, but there's also platforming, so both forms are useful and work within Sonic Frontiers. Although the movement speed of the mech on ground would have to be a lot faster than in SA2. But ideally, you would want Tails out of the mech to be the fastest way to traverse on ground, while the Cyclone is the best way to move around in the air. And also imagine being able to shoot things and fly at the same time in Tails' mech. The possibilities are just very exciting, and I would love to see a mod that does this, or have this be how Tails plays in the next 3D Sonic game. Now for some more quality of life minor features I would love to see added to the game. First off, fast travel between the Coco Elder Monk and the Trial Coco Pilot. You can travel between major Cocos in the main game. The fact that you can't do it in the update is kind of weird. I think there should be a button prompt to sidestep to break the cable in the final boss. The only times you ever need to dodge in combat in Sonic Frontiers is with the ninja, and it's very clear that you have to do it because of the little shield it brings up. With the end boss, I knew I had to break the cable somehow, but that particular way to break it didn't really cross my mind. It didn't cross a lot of other people's mind, and I think just having a little prompt above Sonic's head that is like press RB or press LB would just make the boss a lot less frustrating. Next is removing tutorial messages for the new characters. I don't need a training tutorial on how to Psy-loop every time I upgrade it for a new character. I don't know why they force you to get through these screens. They're just a time waster. Another time waster is needing rings to perform the Psy Knuckle, the Psy Hammer, or the Psy Blaster. Whenever you need to use these moves, there's rings around anyways for you to get full meter to use them. They're not really used in combat at all because, again, these characters can't fight any of the enemies on the island really. So having a meter that you have to refill every time you want to use it is just more of an annoyance than an actual gameplay mechanic when you give the fuel to do so right by the challenge every time. So just remove that. Let the characters do the Psy Hammer, Psy Knuckle, and Psy Blaster without spending any meter. Just have it be unlimited. And finally, adding the new Cyberspace levels to Cyberspace Challenge and Arcade mode, as well as adding the new bosses and new Supreme to Boss Rush. I don't know why they didn't already do this. It seems like a weird omission, and I think the Cyberspace Challenge in particular could be really fun with how difficult some of those levels can be. Trying to do them all in one go sounds like a fun challenge to me. Now, some other changes that I'd like to see made to the game that aren't specific to the update is disabling the Guardian boss intros. There were so many times when I was playing Base Frontiers where I would have all this momentum and speed, or I'd be doing this jump, and then all of a sudden, tower! And then all of it's gone and I just fall off a cliff. It's stupid. I know what these bosses are. Just give me the ability to disable the intros. You can disable so many other game pace breaking things in the game that it just baffles me that they didn't give me an option to disable that. Next, to ease the difficulty curve between the rest of Sonic Frontiers and the Final Horizon update, I think some of the bosses from older Rhinos should be carried over to Chaos Island in order to increase the challenge there. Specifically, I think squid should be replaced on Chaos Island with the red ninjas and the red pillars. The fact that we have a Kronos enemy on Chaos just kind of seems weird and redundant considering the fortress is a boss there. So besides the squid that is used for the running away from night segment, because taking that out would just be too complicated, the island should replace squid or any other low-level enemies with some more powerful enemies like red pillar or red ninja. Next, I think Sonic's spin dash should be changed from an unlockable by getting S on all of the open world challenges to just being automatically unlocked once you get to Uranus Island. Just like how Cross Slash and the Stomp and all these other abilities are only unlocked once you reach Kronos, Ares, and Chaos respectively. They kind of already did this in the New Horizon update by just giving you the spin dash once you start playing as Sonic, but I think it should automatically be unlocked for when you start playing the old Uranus as well. And last but not least, I would love Big's Fishing Pond to have a completion notification. It's one of the requirements to get 100%, and it just sucks to have to keep checking if I've gotten all the fish from the Cyberspace pond by exiting and re-entering to see the percentage. So those are the 25 changes I would love to see made to Sonic Frontiers in order to make it the best game it can be within what was given to us. A lot of these changes, besides the Tails suggestion, are things I think should have been in the game to begin with, kind of like how in the first version of Frontiers, you had to upgrade your rings and speed one at a time with the Elder Coco, but then in Update 1, they added the ability to do it in bulk. I don't think Sonic Team is going to do another update to this game. We'd be lucky if we got a patch that addresses any of this, but I hope they add some of these things because it would make the game just feel so much better to play. But maybe you disagree with me. I know Sonic fans have very different opinions on this update and how to fix it, so whatever opinions you have, I would love to hear them in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe with notifications on, and with all that being said, I hope to see you guys back here for the next video.